Welcome to the place where we learn about and learn from the leaders in our field who are powering human creativity. I'm Aaron Dworkin, and this is Arts Engines. Just a heads up, everyone, that my new book, Lessons in Gratitude, a memoir on race, the arts, and mental health, published by the University of Michigan Press, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. I encourage you to check it out. Thanks again for joining me here on Arts Engines. Today's guest is Neil Barclay, who serves as president and CEO of the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. It's good to see you again.
Well, obviously, I am so excited to talk to you. I have been blessed with the opportunity to see your work literally over decades, your impact on communities, on so many of the organizations that you've led, on our field as a whole. So it is exciting, and of course, love that the Wright is one of our great creative partners here at Arts Engine. So I am particularly excited to be able to talk with you for this show.
Thanks, Aaron. I appreciate that.
One of the things that was actually, standing out for me is that, throughout your career, you have either led BIPOC organizations, been a BIPOC leader of organizations, et cetera. And so you have always been, kind of at the pinnacle of thinking about, strategizing about the specific issues and challenges that may confront specifically BIPOC organizations or BIPOC-led organizations. And it seems to me that, if we were having this interview several years ago, it would be kind of, with the, tragedy of George Floyd, there has actually been, it seems, some increased interest and funding for BIPOC organizations. But now today, I'm beginning to feel and hear different things from the field, and that there has been a lessening of that resourcing, that commitment, et cetera. So I'm curious, both from your perspective specifically at the Wright, but also beyond that in the field, what are you seeing and what do you think is occurring?
Wow, there's certainly a lot going on within the field as it relates to BIPOC organizations post George Floyd. We saw this influx of financial support. It really stabilized many of us, allowed us to create some much needed reserves and backstops for what was really a very unsustainable, sort of financial model that many of us were operating under. So that was really a welcome period of relief. But what we are finding is now that we have stabilized, what are the resources that are out there to continue to both stabilize our organizations and allow us to grow and innovate? So it really is really important in this moment for BIPOC organizations in particular to continue to make the case that those resources are still needed. They were a one-time influx, which were what had been decades really of under-resourcing. And so those resources, in order to get us to a point where we are really stable as institutions, need to continue. And I think that is really what this moment is about for many of us, right? We got through the post-George Floyd period. We are continuing, though, to have to look for those resources to sustain our work at the level that we know, we've always known, but that we've been able to operate with these additional resources, both human and financial, frankly. Be able to attract a few more, more people to the field, really, and pay them what they deserve, right? So
with many in our audience who are in these roles or in these positions or with these organizations, any kind of key guidance or top priorities that you would suggest that they take into account as they're thinking about this? Are there things beyond, well, should we just be reaching out to individuals or corporations or foundations or government or anything that you have a sense of, I might suggest these priorities?
Um, I think one priority, which we haven't had the luxury of doing, is to think farther out than the current period, right? To begin to think about how are the resources you have today going to be able to get you not just through the next season, but perhaps the following season, and maybe the following season after that, right? So to be able to be thinking on a longer trajectory, I think would be helpful. And I think it would inform how aggressive, if you will, or how you want to operate even in the present moment, right? Because those that future period is so uncertain right now that we can't afford to just think about what's next, but what's maybe after what's next, right? Needs to be thought about as well. I think that's really important for us. And frankly, we haven't had the luxury of doing that, and many of us will feel, well, I don't have the luxury of doing that even now. But I think even the exercise of thinking, how are these resources employed or deployed in a certain way, get me beyond the present. For some people, that's something as simple as putting aside a little bit of money for a rainy day or creating a reserve, those kinds of things. But it also may just be thinking about the projects taking longer to come to fruition, if you will, or, you know, giving yourself the time to bring more resources to bear before green lighting something, and those kinds of strategies. They'll be different in every situation. I'm
Yeah.
not saying this is prescriptive of what to do, but I do think the longer term thinking is important and something that we typically don't have the luxury of doing, but maybe we just take that luxury in this present moment.
Absolutely. And one of the things you mentioned or referenced was the uncertainty now. And so there's certainly a lot of organizations find themselves in the midst of uncertainty. There's obviously political uncertainty, et cetera. And what I'm also wondering, right, we see a lot of more news articles, not even political sphere, but for especially corporations pulling back on DEI initiatives or funding, those types of things. So there are definitely those in our audience where there are fears. Is our funding going to be diminished or potentially even go away? Do we have to worry about that or shift our thinking or wordings at all or messaging, right? Any thoughts or advice for those in our audience who are seeing some of these articles and maybe feeling very viscerally that uncertainty?
Well, clearly the moment and the focus on DEI in my mind was not something that necessarily would last forever. And I say that because it came on so quickly and so many people jumped on the bandwagon of DEI without thinking what that commitment might really mean in the long term, right? They were thinking more, I'll put something into this now. And so the way I always looked at it was they were going to put something into it now, right? I think what we're seeing is that pulling back, but I also think what we're seeing is certain corporations who are staying the course on that work, right? And I think in my mind, that was probably always how it was going to shake out. Certain people would have that moment where they said, you know what, this is something we value, we want to keep investing in. And there's some people who saw it as a reaction to the present moment. And so, yes, it's destabilizing, but I think for us, at least at the right, we never thought that was going to last forever. That would have been for us just counterintuitive almost, right? All of a sudden the world's going to wake up and start resourcing BIPOC organizations.
Right.
That's right. I don't think so, right? But I do think that, what I'm encouraged by, let's just say,
Mm.
is there are organizations, corporations, foundations that really lean into this work in a really substantive way. And I think what we can do is continue to encourage those philanthropies, those corporations to stay the course there. and then continue to look for other allies who DEI by any other name, and there are many ways to describe what this work is about in its essence, uh, that work can continue and those investments can continue. I mean, this is really about creating the kind of cultural economy and society that lifts up all different kinds of people, organizations, cultural traditions, right? Um, and I think that's an important thing for our country right now, to lift up those traditions, because I think they do inform a kind of unity in a way of what is our common humanity. It informs those things, I think, that are so critical to us living vibrant, happy lives, our cultural, you know,
Totally.
backgrounds. I think the more we can celebrate that in each other, not just in ourselves, the better our society becomes, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we are just about out of time, but as you know, I always like to ask of my guests, you are, of course, the pinnacle of just leadership in our field, but there has to be some tough days where there's, key challenges that you're looking to face. And just wondering, as an arts leader, as an administrative leader, is there any kind of key mechanism or thing you use when you're faced with what might seem like insurmountable challenges?
Hmm. I have to say, I don't see too many challenges as being insurmountable. I would say that many of the challenges that I face will take a longer time to resolve. There's not a quick fix for them, but there is a fix for them, right? I would say that. And so I believe in patience as a virtue, right? Of continuing to push and stay the course. And some things just take longer to get to the result that I would like. The other thing, and I talked about this in previous conversations we've had, that I am concerned about, is leadership, and the need for those of us who are more senior in the field to really mentor, to bring along, to help out our younger colleagues and really understand and becoming more equipped to deal with the work and the issues and the challenges that we face, right? And so our Wright Fellows program, for example, we're developing, really will attempt to do that by really pairing senior leaders with post mid-career executives, to really help them understand the complexity of the worlds that we navigate, right? So I do think about that a lot, and I think that's an important thing for all of us, particularly those of us who have been in the field for a while, to be thinking about how is it we bring this next generation along in a way that prepares them for what they're likely to face sitting in these seats.
Well, it is just an ongoing reflection of your incredible legacy and impact on the field. Neil Barclay, you truly are one of the arts engines who is powering human creativity in our world. Thank you so much for everything you do. Thank you for your leadership, for your friendship, and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it.
Just a heads up, everyone, that my new book, Lessons in Gratitude, a memoir on race, the arts, and mental health, published by the University of Michigan Press, is now available on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. I encourage you to check it out.